In Christianity, the fruits of Christianity, I go through all the statistics I mentioned. They're the most happiest. Science verifies that, God gives people purpose, and they have intrinsic purpose.
This is basically, when it boils down to it, it's Lucifer.
Yep,
because he's getting ready for and he's getting ready for his entrance.
Yes, he is.
And the argument in this debate is really about, would Noah's Ark work? And I think I've already made the case that Noah's Ark would work, that a ship that size could be built out of wood and would be seaworthy, as testified to by a world-class shipbuilding firm in South Korea.
The Bible talks about all man being created from the rib. Human beings, no primate, only human beings. You remove a rib, they can grow back. That's pretty profound. There's the odds that human language can't arise on its own. All empirical evidence shows that it can't, but Adam was taught language, it says.
I would say that based on, the fact that we inherit 100 new mutations per person per individual, you take that genetic entropy back to a point of least genetic entropy. I don't know exactly what they look like. I can't really draw you a picture, but that would be a genome of for one, created diversity without any, mutational load, genetic load. So
Basically, what
Tov Adonai le ma'oz vayam sara'ave yadoye chosevo. The Lord is good, a stronghold in the day of trouble. He knows those who take refuge in him. Nahum 1:7. Hey, we got Honesty Angel, we got Javier, we got Matt. Man, we got Honesty Angel. Nice to have you guys in the chat. We also got a special guest tonight. And we got Mr.Brass, and he is very knowledgeable on this subject. So we're going to go back a little bit. It's like probably about 8 months ago that I went on Skylar's show. And what I'm going to do is going to reassess some things, and maybe I could have improved or different arguments. And so we're going to go through that. I want to also let Mr. Brass, let him weigh in on some of these, on this discussion as well. But also, if anyone in the chat has like any questions and want to say anything, you're welcome. I'll put that also in there. Hold on, for some reason my my background's all messed up. Hold on. Oh, it's just like so annoying sometimes with Streamlabs. Yo, Mitchell. Yo, Brad. So do you see the people in the chat or?
Let me see. No, not currently, but what I do, like, I actually got both my windows up with all my quotations on Leviticus and stuff. So
Sweet.
when to that topic, I can always have this stuff prepared. Oh, I would like to mention one little thing though. That, when we get into the whole Leviticus 25 thing, I got like stuff from Dr. Art Lindsay. I got some articles for you too.
Yeah, I mean that's sweet. I don't know if I was on mute or not, but yeah, I love to add that to the stuff that in my notes and stuff, so I can add in the future when I have opponents. You always, I mean, Christians are very. It's probably going to happen to anyone, like any Christian out there. You're going to probably be confronted with the slavery thing. So, but Mr. Brass, like if you check out his biblical arguments, Old Testament, incredible stuff, like with misogyny. Check out his videos with misogyny. He's a very good defender of arguments. He's a very logical and reasonable, person to watch. So,
Yeah, I mean, when I speak, like, I don't deny that there was sexism of a kind, because there was, but a lot of the examples that people get are not exactly like the case for sexism in a lot of cases is overstated. There was sexism, you could say, in some ways. Like, I'm trying to think of one of the, I think it was Deborah, like when she had killed a man, or this might have been another one, but when a woman killed a man, the guy looked up at him and had disgust because he was going to be killed by a woman. So, I mean, there was misogyny there.
Yeah.
But I think that's overstated.
Right.
You know, it's an overstated case that they make. It existed, but
Yeah,
for one,
right,
it's like it existed, yeah, but it's not like it was a desirable end. Like in the garden, there was no sexism. Adam and Eve were equal, but when they fell out, like when they sinned and they got kicked out of the garden, like God had to sort of accommodate with the sin that they were doing.
Right. He always gives a like a plan to reconcile, or at least try to make up for that, for people's errors and mistakes and sins. So I mean that's of course that's my position as a Christian. But
well, yeah, it wasn't so much condoning sex. It's like not much of approving of sexism, but it's more like it's accommodating with sexism and what man is doing in order to get them back to Eden.
Right.
Because that's the ultimate goal of everything, and the ultimate goal of all the laws is to get man back to Eden.
Exactly.
And to do that, I think some people say, well, why didn't God just say directly no slaves? You really think they would have followed it?
Right.
Like, if God would have said, no slaves whatsoever, well, God more or less did that with idolatry, and guess what? They still did that.
Well, I mean, that's what even Jeremiah 35 says. It says, you put my people in slavery, you retards. Like, that's what he actually, if you read that account in Jeremiah 35, he says for people to not put, he says for his people to not put other people in slavery, and they did. So, of course, I mean, it's already, even in the Bible, they said they did that. So, isn't that interesting?
Yes, I mean, it's like a bad point to make. It's like, that's the entire point. Like, that's not even a Christian thing. That's also what Jews would tell you as well. The entire point, it's just a stronger case if you're a Christian, but with Jews, they all believe that it's all getting you back to Eden. Although with Jews, it's more orthopratic than it is orthodoxy, which Christians are more into. With Jews, it's more orthopraxy in the case that you can work your way back to Eden, while Christians always believe that you can't by your works get back there.
Exactly. So I'm going to fire up this video, and tell me if you can hear it, because I want to make sure you can hear the background of it.
All right.
There we go. Here's our guest. Praise that I am. What's up, man? How are you tonight?
Can you hear that?
Yes, I can hear that.
Sweet. So feel free to jump on in, and I'll probably be coming to you, and want you to weigh in on some things. If that be, it's up to you if you want to weigh in. But I think there's some interesting points that I could maybe have done better, maybe, or brought in some other points that that would have been more beneficial to the conversation. So here we go.
All right.
Hey, good evening, guys.
Hey, good. We're glad to have you on here, man. What can we call you? Should we just call you Praise That I Am, or do you want to give us a name we can call you?
Just Praise. Yeah, that's fine.
All right, Praise. So usually we start the show by having you kind of introduce yourself, say hello, tell us a little bit about you, if you have a channel or all that kind of fun stuff. So why don't we start by doing that?
I kind of have a lone channel I do a few videos on, but most of my work is done on a guy named JMD Apologetics.
JMD Apologetics!
Petty, yeah.
Yeah, and Brass has done some work with him too. So Brass is a good friend of his, and it's JMD that's got me started online to do all this stuff. So I mean, I can give a lot of thanks to him anyway. So I mean, he's a cool dude. So this is back in the day when I started on JMD Apologetics channel.
I don't know if you ever heard of him. He has about 800 followers or so. And
I can with him on Facebook actually.
Yeah, and he can, and I contribute to his channel mostly, but I do a few videos on mine, and I did run across your guys, so I thought I'd respond, and I guess it could have, it could have been misconstrued, as being disrespectful or something. I didn't want that to happen. That was not my.
Yeah, my intention wasn't to really try to, make a mockery out of him or anything, or try to go on a smear campaign. That was not my intention. It was more for like a rebuke or correction, and that's what we're called to do. Paul says that in several places. So, but what happened is like it got heated. So we got these.
That happens sometimes. I get like that too. I'm on Twitter. I get really heated.
Right. And so, like, I guess, like, stuff starts happening when it gets heated. And so, we'll just keep going here. If this is too much of an introduction part, I'll just fast forward, but hold on.
Intention. To Josh, especially.
Well, no, I don't think we're too worried about being disrespected, but I thought we would have you on to kind of talk about some of your arguments, some of the stuff you thought we got wrong. Since you're the guest, maybe you could choose the first thing you'd like to go over when we're talking about slavery and where you think Josh and I really got it wrong.
Okay.
You got a lot wrong, Skylar. So just get ready for it. And obviously during this time of doing studying and researching, there's a lot more stuff that I have to bring to the table that if I had it back then, I'm sorry, but you and Josh would have been. Your arguments would have been pretty much obliterated. So I'm going to show that, and I'm obviously Brass too. Brass has his clout as well. So we'll keep on going.
First, I think atheists like to paint the Mosaic covenant like the social, economic system, and compare it to antebellum slavery or Egyptians.
But that's in my debate with modern day debate I had with me and Jill and then them two. That is the traditional definition of slavery. Anyway, that's the real definition.
Well, yeah, that's how really. That's also not even just the definition. That's sort of the culture, and people do tend to read in their culture into the Bible.
Yeah. So, to me, they have some type of arbitrary. It's arbitrary and subjective, really subjective, and it's ambiguous. And there's really nothing that is credible. Like you can say that it gets substantiated. You can't really substantiate. It's just like. It's murky water. Like you don't know what are you talking about? They need to either hold to the traditional word slavery, the traditional meaning, or just say that it's not really slavery. We call it like inhumanity or something like that. So, to me, the fallacy that what this is called is equivocation fallacy. They don't even know what really constitutes slavery, and you're going to see Skylar fumble all over the place here. He goes all over the place. So I wanted to point that out too.
Slavery, and I think that's that's an unfair comparison. I think that needs to be updated or changed. It's a different type of.
Yeah, and hold on. I'm going to have to, since we're here in this stream, since there's some new things that I'm assessing that I could have brought up in that conversation. I'm going to give you some definitions for the chat. Also, you too, Brass. So hold on one second. So okay. So this is from freedictionary.com. The condition in which one person is owned as property by another and is under the owner's control, especially involuntary servitude. A civil relationship in which one person has absolute power over the life, fortune, and liberty of another. Now, that's straight up from the dictionary. And I can even use quotes from, historians and people that are involved in culture, like what do you call culturalists, and like that people that work with the cultures of back then. I even have quotes from them, and it's the same thing. So Schuyler he's to me equivocating when he says the word slavery, because it's not the one that is traditional in the dictionary, especially Free Dictionary. So would you say about that, Brass? Would you agree? Like, would you say like slavery would be like debt slavery or something like that?
I mean, I say it ultimately depends on the context of what it is. If it was, for example, war captives, then you could make the argument that it would be closer to the idea of what we would consider like antebellum slavery, although not really technically.
Right.
It would be more closer to it, but it wouldn't be exactly like, but verbatim, because if you were an exile, like not an exile, but that's one option. But if you were a war captive, of course you wouldn't have the 7-year time limit or whatever, because you might need to be looked, make sure you're not going to rebel for longer than 7 years.
Right, and we're talking about war captives that are very hostile, and they, killing babies with the Molech and stuff, and they had to be police anyway. It's just safe that was the proper interpretation of it.
Well, I mean, what they have to also realize back in war captives is most war captives would prefer to die. Like most people, like back, like in an honor culture, what they lived in, like most people would have just preferred to be killed than to be a war captive, because that would be considered a big dishonor to them, to be lowered to that. So, but if they did happen to survive and they were, like, generally the case was that they would be serfs, like where they wouldn't technically have an owner, but they would be forced to work, where they would be monitored, you could say, by the Israelite, where they would have to farm a certain amount and give it to the Israelites, and this could or could not be considered, what you would consider chattel slavery, but I mean, it wouldn't be exactly there, because the rules really were set to stop slavery from being abused.
Yeah.
I mean, well, what's funny is they say, but God condoned slavery or God approved of it. I'm like, well, because he made regulations for it. I'm like, you do know that God made regulations for divorce too.
Yeah, for the hardness of the heart. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not like, God didn't approve of divorce or like it. It's just he just recognized it was a thing that people of that culture were doing, and said, well, how can I make it so it's, for one, harder and it won't be abused?
Yeah.
So it's a accommodation, because it's all trying to get back to even.
Good point. And
that's what my conversation with Michael Heiser.
Oh, wow. Yeah, Michael Heiser's a great source for that, too. But one thing that I'd like to mention, though, I'm going to show some citation for this, a lot of citation, is that I wouldn't necessarily call them serfs. I would call them vassals that were part of vassal treaties within the land there. And these vassal treaties would be part of the suzerain power, and these would be agreements and contracts that they agreed to. So, and there's so much evidence. I'm going to show a lot of evidence for this when we get to that, but that's how I would say, maybe a little bit more nuanced view than yours. I mean, your point is good points there, but I'm just saying, maybe, yeah.
Well, I mean, there's multiple interpretations you can really take of it. Like we keep going back to is with Leviticus 25:44, because that tends to be the one that atheists always bring up.
Yeah.
That's the most, because they say you can explain away other ones, but you can't explain this one. I'm like, well, for one, I don't know exactly who are the people in context, or if it's more than one foreigner in context with there, because you get different answers for it, from different scholars. You could get, for one, this could be talking about exiles. You can make a grammatical argument for that. It could also be war captives, which you got Michael Kaiser Jr., I believe his name is.
Yeah.
where he makes that argument. It could also be, as you said, it could be like foreigners under a treaty.
Right.
Well, the whole point of the reason why they wouldn't be under the Jubilee is for pretty obvious reasons. The Jubilee is like you could say, an Israelite holiday. It's for the Israelite religion.
Yeah.
If you're not a part of the Israelite religion, the Jubilee will mean nothing to you.
Right, and to me, that
like,
would be, actually they would be a choice to do that because they proselytize foreigners all the time, and Exodus 12.
So, I mean, it's sort of like the Jubilee would be to foreigners what's the Hanukkah would be to Christians.
Yeah,
it's like you wouldn't feel that bad being excluded because you don't believe in the underlying religion that goes into it anyway.
Exactly.
So I mean that's the whole theological point behind the Jubilee as well, is to distinguish what's funny is they always go with Leviticus 25. They say, they may be owned forever. I'm like, well, this mirrors Deuteronomy in the case where, a guy can hook his, if he loves his master and he loves his woman,
he could pierce his ear. Yeah.
Yeah. And people say, oh, well, that's so dehumanizing. They're obviously giving him a dog tag or whatever, like making him officially a property. I'm like, there was no shame in the tag. It was actually, if anything, a great honor because that's what priests did.
Great point. Yeah, great point.
So, I mean, if anything, there was a great honor in having your ears pierced, not any shame attached to it.
Right, and if you notice how it says if they love their master, it didn't say if they were afraid of their master or coerced by their master, or like fought with their master. It says that if they love their master, then they can get the ear pierced. So it's a token of love. And if you look at the word ahav in the Hebrew, that word love is really unconditional. It has unconditional connotations to it.
Well, I mean, they have to also realize is that if this was a woman that was like the woman he fell in love with was born into the house, then essentially the master would be like her surrogate father. He would be filling in the role as the father, and this would be welcoming them both into the family.
Yeah, I think we're going to get to that in a second. I have a lot of citation on that too.
It's a stigma that needs to be changed. Hopefully, that's what I'm trying to do in my channel is to try to change that stigma.
Right. These stigmas need to be revolutionary. It needs some type of revolutionary change. If that's social media, whatever you want to call it, these stigmas need to be replaced with, like what Brass does, more understanding of what's going on in the culture, but also maybe even more understanding and hermeneutics of what's going on as well. There's a lot of, research that goes into this. I didn't know how much, but it's a lot. And I'm actually, thankful it happened because it was a good experience. Like when you work so hard at something and you go, wow, this is how much I've learned. But I didn't expect this when I first began interacting with Josh and Skylar. So that's pretty interesting. Also, I learned a lot from Brass as well.
Of antebellum slavery, happening in the Mosaic Covenant.
Mm-hmm. So, we don't really need it to be that type of slavery. We could just talk about the kinds of things that are actually described in there. Without it, I think it kind of holds up problematic on its own.
Someone is like oozing out their presuppositions and their biases. Like you can. Skylar wears his biases on his face. Like you can just see it. He is very. You can see right through him on that.
Typically it always goes into the whole. What's the word? It always goes into the whole beatings of slaves and stuff. That's always sort of the thing that they find problematic. I'm like, well, it says a rod.
Yeah.
And a rod, when you look at almost any other time it's mentioned throughout the Bible, it's always a means of discipline.
Very true. But it's also
and
can
like,
be used self-defense as well, too.
well, yeah, but I mean, like, they say, well, look how bad the slaves have been treated. You do realize that even free people were beaten as well.
Exactly.
It was a means of discipline, not like if if a servant or whoever was being was being a danger to a society, or was actually like trying to maybe fight someone. Yeah, they'd be hit by a rod. That was a way of like dissolving the situation.
And I think that in my new arguments, this is what I formulated. So this is going to be my new updated, what I would probably bring up to this if I had a chance, in another conversation. This is what I bring. This is a good point, Brass. You're actually making me bring up a new point here. Is if you read Numbers 35, it brings the same situations into the account. Like one time, this talks about a rock, and one time it uses a man's hand, and one time it uses a brass instrument. Believe it or not, I think it says brass instrument. And so, to me, if you read Numbers 35, it becomes clear it's a hypothetical weapon or hypothetical object. So what makes, if you're going to say this is common practice, then why is the stick or whatever, the rod, any more common practice than someone's fist, than someone's rock, and someone's brass instrument? So you're going to have to scholars that these are